What's up, agents? Welcome back to the Fangirl Files podcast. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Madison, and today we're going to be investigating heroes, villains, and anti-heroes. But first, I actually have a question for you. If you were a part of your own world, would you be a hero, villain, or anti-hero?
That's actually a very interesting question that I don't know the answer to. I feel like I don't have the conventional sense of a hero. I'd probably be an anti-hero that like develops a moral compass.
Oh yeah.
But like at the same time, I think it would be fun as to be a villain.
Yeah, villains have more fun.
They really do. Like one of the villains I'm going to talk about, she definitely has a lot of fun. But like realistically, I'd probably be the anti-hero.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you?
Probably a villain or an anti-hero because, as you said, I feel like a lot of the heroes are supposed to uphold societal expectations, whereas like villains are more so about the way that they're categorized is supposed to be othering certain people who sort of deviate from those societal expectations. And so I feel like a lot of my life has been dedicated to like tearing down those societal expectations. So I'd definitely be a villain.
Yeah. So like, I think we did this episode a while back for those of you who followed The Caffeinated Artist, which sucked. And
no,
thank you for indulging me. No, it's better with you here now.
It's not.
It's all better now.
No.
Because that was my most popular episode was when you came on.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like that's because it's family members though. Like my family members watched it. Or
really?
Maybe they did. I don't know.
If they're not listening now, I don't know if they're listening.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't even think they hit subscribe. Neither one of our family members have. But yeah, we did this episode before, and we had to take it down because we wanted to rebrand everything for Fangirl Files. And now we're here again, and it's a little more organized than last time, I think. Yeah. I had no idea what to expect, though, because that was my first time on a podcast.
Yeah, nor did I, because I like really wasn't good at recording without a person there. Because I feel like I had more of an on-topic episode with you there. So I guess on that note, we will get started with heroes. And we should say that we divided this up into stereotypical genders. So we have male heroes, anti-heroes, and villains. And then we have female heroes, anti-heroes, and villains.
Well, we tried.
So guys, unfortunately, I know it looks like from our demographic like that a good chunk of our audience is female.
Yeah.
And we just want to say that we worked our hardest to kind of get good representation on our favorite side for females, but there really, unfortunately, isn't a lot to work with.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about it and we were like, there are female heroes like in the MCU and everything, but it's very hard to connect with a lot of those heroes because, like, take Black Widow, for example. She is viewed more as a sex symbol than a hero when in reality she's pretty badass. So you don't feel connected to her. And like, should we address the video stuff now that we just watched?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. So I showed Madison a few minutes ago in my female action hero class, we at one point were shown videos from BuzzFeed of women posing as classic comic book heroes, like female comic book heroes. And they had all said, my body will never look like this. I can't bend that way. They're so unrealistically drawn. They felt demeaned and horrible about themselves. And then conversely, we watched another one of their videos where women posed as their favorite superheroes, but male superheroes. And in those photos where they got to put on the costume and get put on a movie poster in the same pose, they all talked about feeling empowered and beautiful and strong and like they could do anything. And so that just shows that there's so much underrepresentation of strong female characters in the media.
I would even argue complex female characters because I feel like a lot of representations are so focused on we're strong and we're powerful due to our struggles rather than like we're actual complex beings as complex as the male characters are because it's so gender focused. And it's like, I want more female heroes, don't get me wrong, but I want them to be as complicated and with better arcs that the male characters get.
And do you notice that their arcs primarily center around men?
Exactly, yeah.
I guess Nats doesn't center around men.
Not Hulk, though.
Like, that's true. They forced her arc around a man. It wasn't meant to be centered around that, but, like, she has this whole emotional development because of her romance with Bruce, which, like, hot topic, we hate, by the way, because ew.
Yeah.
But, like, sorry, Mark Ruffalo, we love you. But, still, disgusting.
Yeah.
So, like, all female hero relationships are centered on men. Like, Wonder Woman 1984, I expected it to be this awesome film. And instead it was like, how can I get Steve back? Like, how can he come back?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was kind of disgusting.
That movie sucked its own dick with, like, female representation, because you had that scene where Cheetah, she was harassed by that one drunk guy, and then she sees him in the alley again and she beats him up. And I'm like, we all have had fantasies of that happening, but it felt pandering to just...
It also felt very forced. It wasn't even like a natural thing. It was just kind of like, hey, and she just kind of punched him out.
Yeah. And again, like, it's too centered around the struggles that women face, because the reason why the first Wonder Woman was so good is because, as you said, it felt more natural, and we could see Wonder Woman within, like, her own arc developing as this badass woman. And it wasn't because she was a woman, it was because she was so empowered and able to do a lot of the things that men did.
And in the first film, she wanted to get back to her people and protect her people, and then it became protecting the man she loved.
Yeah.
It wasn't fully focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, due to that, we are very sorry, but we don't have too much on the female front for you, but we do have a couple of things. So, on that front, favorite male hero?
My first one is Batman, and that's obvious. Batman's been a huge part of my life since I was, like, a little girl, and I remember watching Justice League, the animated series, and he just has, you can tell the other members respect him so much, and not because he's, like, trying to earn their respect, but because he's this, like, hardworking, intelligent, versatile, independent man. And I think in a way I sort of wanted that respect from my peers. And over time I sort of started developing traits that Batman had, which is kind of weird. Like, I can relate to the fact that he's antisocial and he doesn't really ask for a lot of help, which you know that about me. Like, I struggle so much to let people, to not want to work alone all the time. But I love the fact that he's fascinated by, like, psychology too, due to the trauma of losing his parents. He wants to understand how a criminal could kill a 10-year-old boy's parents, 8-year-old boy, his parents in front of him. And
not feel any remorse for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why he's so obsessed with figuring out the psychology of all the other villains within the Rogue Gallery. And for me, like, I love the psychology of other people. And my favorite thing when meeting new people is figuring out, like, what makes you tick? Like, why are you the way that you are? And so seeing that on screen was, like, really fun for me. And the way that he plays his double life, it makes me laugh, because Bruce Wayne is, like, a mask for Batman in a lot of ways, but he's this, like, charming billionaire playboy that everyone seems to love, whereas Batman is, like, this feared figure who is serious and stoic. And I remember one of my favorite scenes is in Batman, like, The Dark Knight, where the Joker gives Gotham an ultimatum where he's like, I'm going to kill this guy, I think he's a politician, or I'm going to blow up a hospital every 60 minutes. And so Commissioner Gordon and, like, the group of the other police rush this guy named Reese into, like, a convoy. And what ends up happening is Bruce crashes into, I think it was either the convoy or the people going after the convoy. And I remember Commissioner Gordon sort of gets out of that vehicle and goes up and he's like, how did you know to hit us at this specific time? Like, you know, like, you just saved this guy's life, right? And Bruce Wayne, he just looks really, like, really kind of shaken. And he's like, well, I just wanted to run the red light. I didn't want to wait. And just when he plays stupid, it's so funny to me, because, you know, like, Batman's really smart. So it's just the irony of it all.
No, definitely. I don't know too much about Batman, because I remember we were trying to watch the Christian Bale Batman movies and fell asleep.
Yeah.
Well, that was, we had gotten back somewhere really late and we fell asleep. It wasn't because I thought it was boring. I promise. They're still on my list to watch. And I also, because I know that Batman is such a complex character, don't want to watch Robert Pattinson become Batman. So that's a whole nother story that I will not get into here.
Oh, okay.
But no, I agree. I just don't know enough about Batman to, like, speak to that because I haven't seen those movies, you know? So I don't know. Maybe Robert Pattinson will do good. Maybe he won't. But anyway, because you talked about your childhood hero, I'm going to go on a very brief rant about my childhood hero and then go who the heroes I picked for this episode are. I'm obviously a big Harry Potter person. Everybody who's listened to this podcast for any amount of time knows that. So I guess my favorite male hero, to a fault, when I was little, was Harry Potter. And I say that because I've read Harry Potter 13 times. And I always identified with Harry and just how he was so misunderstood as a child and basically felt like nobody wanted anything to do with him. And then he was put in a place where he had to suddenly learn to adapt to what he was. And for those of you who listened to an episode that I had up a long time ago with my disability, it was always like, okay, I have to kind of adapt and be like not what's expected of me and prove people wrong. And that's kind of what Harry has to do. And like in Snape's case, like he obviously shits on Harry all the time. And he's like, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to be like this. I'm going to be the one that everybody wants me to be and like live up to the standard. And so I really admire that. And then just the unconditional love he has for the people that have protected him. I think that he's a very admirable hero. I think he's really stupid and that he wouldn't have survived without Hermione Granger.
Yeah.
And she is not on my female heroes list because she's not a technical hero, I guess, in like the sense of like a main protagonist. But Hermione Granger gets honorable mention because without her, Harry would be dead. Yeah. Anyway, my favorite heroes that I picked for the purpose of the episode were actually a tie between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, so Captain America and Iron Man. And again, if you guys know me, you know that these are two very, very important men in my life. Sorry, Reed.
Oh, God.
Chris Evans will always be more important. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Cut the cameras. Dead ass.
I would have originally, like, had you asked me a few years ago, would have said that Captain America was my only favorite, like, male hero in the MCU. And that's not only because I'm in love with Chris Evans, but, just Steve has always been kind and gentle and just pure to a fault. He never wanted to cause violence. He always just wanted to do the good, do the best for the country and its people and for his team. And he was willing to lay his life down on the line.
Yeah.
Regardless of cost. And that's something I've always really admired about Steve. Like, even from the first Avenger, he was like, I will get injected with the super serum just because I want to be able to fight in this war. And just because I want to be able to protect my country just like Bucky is, just like everybody I know is, and I don't want to be the scrawny little kid anymore. But he didn't use that power for the wrong reasons. And even in Endgame, when he lifted Mjolnir, he knew that he could lift Mjolnir before Endgame. I think I read that somewhere, or I heard that from the Russo brothers or something, that he knew in Age of Ultron when they were all doing the, like, lift the hammer out of the ice thing, like, he knew, and that's why it moved when Thor, like...
And Thor was like, oh, shit. And then he was pretending, like, to not hurt Thor's ego.
Right, and he, like, knew that he could lift it, but he never utilized that power until it was absolutely necessary. And that's something I really admire, because once you know you can lift a hammer like that, wouldn't you want to use it all the time? I just think that he was just incredibly pure. But come Civil War time, before, I was a little late to the Marvel train. I should say that now. I did love the movies from what I had seen of them, but I didn't watch them in order. I didn't go see them in theaters because I was, like, a little young and my parents weren't into it and they didn't want to take me to the movies for it because they didn't care. But, like, when I wanted to go see Captain Marvel and Endgame, Madison is the one that told me you should watch the other films before seeing everything. So when I watched Civil War, I went into it thinking I'm going to be Team Cap because Steve always has the best interest at heart of everyone involved and there just should be nothing wrong. But when you get into Civil War, you realize that a lot of Steve's logic is kind of flawed. He does have, I guess, the conventional moral sense of I need to help my friend and be loyal to my friend and make sure that me and my friends can fight for our rights, because we're forgetting that he fought in a war where a lot of people didn't have those same rights. And so he's very much for that, which is something you still admire. However, the way he handled Tony's parents' deaths and knowing that Bucky was behind it and still being adamant that, like, that Tony was in the wrong, I think that's incredibly stupid. And so I think I kind of started to see where Tony started to come out of his shell, because that was the first time I'd ever seen Tony Stark be vulnerable. Madison and I were talking about that before the episode started, and we said that, like, he started to kind of feel badly because he had heard from the woman at the beginning of the movie, like, oh, I lost my son in Sokovia and you were there and it's your fault.
Yeah.
So he, when it came to the Accords, was very much like, okay, I feel so guilty and I don't want this to happen to any other people.
Yeah.
So we are going to do what we're told. And that's not something that Tony typically does. He never does what he's told. He never is one to back down from a fight. And like, I guess at first glance, if you're not really paying attention, you're kind of like, well, I lose respect for you, but it's actually the opposite.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about their arcs that I found interesting is Steve goes from someone who wants to serve the government and who wants to be the good soldier, but then slowly over time he realizes, hey, the government is corrupt internally because he's seen all the things that like Hydra has done. So I'm not going to serve the government. I'm going to serve the people, as Sabrina said. So he goes from someone who was the complete opposite of Tony and becomes more Tony-like because he realizes like the government's control isn't exactly the best for the Avengers. And then Tony, his character arc was more where he was kind of like Steve at the end, where he really wanted the freedom away from the government. And then slowly over time, he realizes, hey, I need to have some accountability for a lot of my actions and I need to become the good soldier. And so I think that confliction between them has been interesting. And I think both sides, as you said, are pretty much like correct. But I don't know exactly where I stand with Civil War, but I agree with you. I think Bucky should have had some accountability for what he did, even though, you know, he was being controlled by Hydra.
Right. And it's because at that point, it's like Steve has the morality to like help his friend, but also isn't Tony his friend by this point? They've been on a team together for years now. And it's like, if you're always wanting to stand up for the people in your life, well, then why aren't you standing up for everyone and not just Bucky?
Yeah, exactly. And I actually had a hero sort of related to that. I love Black Panther because he realized Tony's vengeance to try to kill Bucky. Like the entire Civil War movie, I should preface this by saying this, is him having his father die and wanting vengeance for his father. And so he's going after Bucky the majority of Civil War because he thinks vengeance means justice. And then he sees that this vengeance is like tearing the Avengers apart and that they're going at each other's throats because Tony wants to avenge his parents, but Steve doesn't believe that that's happening. And so he goes out after he realizes that Bucky isn't responsible to Zemo, and he's like, wow, you got them to tear each other apart because of this vengeance. I realize vengeance does not mean justice for me, and so I'm going to try to keep you alive instead of killing you. And T'Challa, he's my favorite hero because his moral code is so strong, and he's willing to put aside his own feelings to try to pursue what's right. People say, like, in Civil War, T'Challa is a completely different person, which I kind of disagree with. I think in Black Panther, he is a lot more developed.
Because when he sees Killmonger doing all of these terrible things, like getting rid of the plant, literally killing T'Challa and trying to take over Wakanda, instead of trying to lock him up, his mentality is, hey, this guy might be right. We maybe should share a lot of our resources with the rest of the world, particularly with people who look like us that are being oppressed. And he even tries to help Killmonger towards the end of the scene where he's like, hey, we could put you in a cell. We could try to help you figure out what's going on here. Like, we don't have to do this. And, you know, there's that iconic line that Killmonger says where he's like, I would rather die like my ancestors than, I'm paraphrasing, than, you know, be locked in chains. And I think that's sort of a testament to Black Panther's character because he's so willing to put aside a lot of his own benefit in order to secure true justice. Because when it comes to Killmonger and Black Panther, the movie itself, he's sort of realizing that, oh, my father wasn't exactly like this great king, and a lot of the things that he did back in the day have these consequences that I now have to deal with. So maybe he's not, you know, that great of a person. And so he's willing to sort of realize, hey, someone I loved was wrong, and I'm going to try to fix that and pursue true justice.
No, I definitely think Black Panther has a very, very strong moral code, and I think he always means to do right by his people and right by his family.
Yeah,
and his like rise as Black Panther. I know the suit, from what I understand, is passed down through the family, through the men in the family, right? I think.
Well, anyone can really challenge it. I've read a few Black Panther comics, but as long as you challenge that person, I think on a particular day, I might be wrong about this, but I don't think it's passed down through the men. I think you can still acquire that power. It's more about strength.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the whole reason he rises as the Black Panther is because of his father's death.
Yeah.
And he has no ill will against... I don't even think he's plotting to, from what I remember, kill any of the Avengers. He just wants the justice from the Winter Soldier, who he doesn't know really had no recollection of it. And I think once he sees that, backs off of it and realizes that his father wouldn't want all this violence, and he has this very strong family values, as well as just a strong bond with his people and with, like you said, villains, and just he wants to help everybody and be the best that he can be for everyone.
Yeah.
And so he's a really admirable hero because he doesn't really have a fatal flaw, as they say, unless it is, I guess, being willing to give everything up for
what's right.
For the sake of what's right. Which that isn't even necessarily a fatal flaw. Yeah. Do you have another hero, or do you want me to?
I have 2 more heroes, but I think I'll do more of an honorable mention sort of thing, so we don't overload this episode. Martian Manhunter, I love him, and Heimdall is an honorable mention, but...
Are we moving on to anti-heroes now?
Yeah, we can move on to anti-heroes.
So I guess I have 2. The first male anti-hero I want to bring up is, naturally another Harry Potter character, Severus Snape.
Snape. Severus Snape. Dumbledore! Snape. Severus Snape.
But yeah, Snape is, kind of your classic anti-hero, but I fucking hate him. This isn't a Snape love post. I want to make it clear to all the Snape stands out there, I disagree with you. You are wrong. Literally, there is no universe in which you people are right, so don't you dare argue with me. Oh, and here I am to explain why. Now, Snape isn't inherently evil because he is trying to protect Harry, even if for his own sick and twisted reasons. Like, in every movie, we do see him trying to protect Harry Potter. Like in Sorcerer's Stone, he stops Quirrell from making Harry's broom chuck him off.
Quirrell?
Yeah, Quirrell.
Oh, I thought it was Quirrell.
It is. You can say it either way.
Okay.
But, like, he calls himself Professor Quirrell.
Oh.
Anyway, Snape is a that's all I gotta say. But no, that's really not all I have to say. Because here's the thing, is he constantly is saving Harry, yes. And he does make the unbreakable vow with Narcissa Malfoy in order to protect Draco. So morally, he is doing what's right, I guess, by his students, but he's not doing it for the correct moral reasons. He judges Dumbledore for using Harry as a pig for slaughter. But to be fucking honest, if it were up to if it were up to Snape, Harry would be dead. He wanted James dead. He didn't even give a damn about James and Harry. All he wanted was for Voldemort to spare Lily. And he had made a deal with Voldemort saying, please spare the woman I love. And just Voldemort mocks him and says, wow, you're really that self-centered that you don't want me to save her son and her husband. And he goes, no, I don't care. And he's like, okay, well, I'll spare her. But that's the only one I'll spare. And then Dumbledore is like, are you shitting me? Like, how could you even say that? And he's like, I please just protect them all. Like, protect them all from him. I know he's going after them. Or he doesn't make the deal with Voldemort. He asks Voldemort to spare Lily. And they make that deal. But then he goes to Dumbledore and says, please protect her. And he goes, what the fuck do you mean protect her? Like, why wouldn't her husband and son be protected? And he goes, fine, protect them all. But he doesn't really care. Like, the most vivid depiction we see in the movie, and I've read the books, again, 13 times, but I'm using the movie because it was just that scene where I knew, like, it was very well illustrated that Snape didn't give a rat's ass. Like, it had been alluded to in the films before, where he was like, your father was swine, all he did was this, and he was arrogant and a prick. But no, during this moment, it was when Harry watched his parents get murdered at Godric's Hollow. And Snape enters the house to find Lily and see if she's okay. And the first body he passes is James, since James died first and on the lower level of the house. And he walks over James's dead body. He doesn't even care. And for all of you who are saying, oh, but Snape was bullied and James bullied him and James is the real villain. No, fuck you. Because listen, James was a bully as a teenager. A lot of teenage boys are stupid. I'm sure a lot of you know that in your daily lives. Hell, I'm in college. Frat boys are James Potter.
James is fucked up, but that doesn't mean he deserves to die.
James was fucked up as a teenager.
Yeah, but he
by
still should have
17
accountability for that.
Yeah,
but
no, and he does and I think he does take accountability for that because it has to be enough where Lily was agreeing to go out with him. Like, yes, they said in Order of the Phoenix when Harry goes into the Fire Grimlet place to like go talk to Sirius and Remus about it, they said like, oh, he never passed up an opportunity to hex Snape, but that's because Snape always was after his neck. And so other than that, he did take full accountability with Lily, and he said, like, I'm not going to be this guy anymore, but if he comes after me, like, I'm going to do what I got to do. And he ended his bullying habits upon graduating Hogwarts. He became a man, he got married, and he had a child. And he would do anything to protect that child and his friends. And James Potter also went and became an animagus illegally for his best friend who was a werewolf and suffering. Now, Severus Snape, on the other hand, became a Death Eater because the girl he loved so much didn't love him back. He may have been dark and twisted and like misunderstood, but he took that and he joined the Death Eaters upon graduating Hogwarts. He would still be a Death Eater had Lily lived. Had Voldemort gone after the Longbottoms like he could have done, Snape would still be a Death Eater. He would have never taken a job at Hogwarts. He would have never agreed to help Dumbledore protect Harry. He wouldn't give a shit. Because all he sees when he looks at Harry is, he looks like James, my best friend, the love of my life, chose him and not me. And it's only when he's dying does he look Harry in the eyes and say, wow, you have your mother's eyes. And it's proven that, like, he supposedly did all this for Harry, that his moral compass is so fucked up that no, he didn't. He did it, 1, to keep himself alive, and 2, because he felt so fucking guilty on account of Lily that he knew he had to do it or she would never forgive him. He was hoping for some, like, shred of forgiveness, I suppose, when he reached the afterlife. And even though that's never said, that's very obvious that that's what it was. And it's just ridiculous that people are like, oh, Snape is, like, the classic hero. And don't even get me started on Harry naming his son after Snape. Like, Albus Severus Potter, are you kidding me? A man that raised you like a chicken in a coop, and fucking Severus Snape? Does Remus Rubius Potter mean nothing to you? Like, Harry Potter, like, Hagrid helped raise you.
True.
You were like his son.
Hagrid deserves better.
And Remus was your father's other best friend. And granted, I've seen some fanfic that says that Harry wanted Remus to be left as a name for Teddy, which is Remus's son, to use. And so I understand that, but like, come on, Arthur Weasley was like a father to you. Where is his recognition? Ginny has family too, Harry.
True.
Like, it's Lily Luna Potter, when Luna was probably Ginny's idea because they were best friends. And then there's James Sirius Potter, and then Albus Severus. Like, Harry, these kids have like 90% names from your family.
Selfishness of men.
Harry Potter is selfish. Anyway, Severus Snape can suck a dick, and he is one of, like, but he's such a complex anti-hero because he has that messed up backstory, and, like, I guess that's why I picked him. But yeah, that was a Severus Snape hate rant. I just want to make that entirely clear. Now, my other favorite male anti-hero, number 1 is sexy as fuck. Number 2. Number 2, he's just, like, he's a fun anti-hero. And Vampire Diaries fans, I'm talking about Mr. Damon Salvatore. Ian Somerhalder! I love him! My sarcastic, sweet, sexy man. Anyway, he is literally, like, he's portrayed as the definition of a monster at the beginning of the show. Like, he kills for fun, but then he like has the most fucked up moral compass there is. Like, I'm gonna give Stefan an eternity of misery because he made me turn into a vampire. Like, oh yes, Damon, that's logical. Spend a millennium torturing your only family. Perfect. That's anyway,
a great idea.
So perfect. We stand Damon. Anyway.
Oh god.
No, I mean, I think Damon's just so fun because, like, his morals are clearly there. especially where Elena's concerned, he wants to keep her safe, and he knows the right thing to do, despite her being in love with Stefan in the beginning, is very much keep her alive, both for my sake and for Stefan. Damon has very selfish reasons for wanting Elena to be alive, because he's fallen in love with her, but also at the same time, the way he goes about keeping her alive, like, Elena will make one choice and say, okay, no, I need to do this even if it may kill me because it's going to save everyone I love, and Damon's like, yeah, fuck that, you're not allowed to leave the house, let me go and make this decision. So, for example, my boyfriend and I are rewatching the series right now. I've seen it once, he wants to watch it now because I asked him to, and he's actually really enjoying it. So we're at the episodes where Klaus is about to perform the sacrifice for the sun and the moon curse. And so Elena pulls the dagger out of Elijah's heart, and she wants to strike up a deal with him. And Damon and Stefan are both like, what are you doing? And then she's like, well, this is my decision. And Stefan's like, all right, well, I'm going to let you go. And Damon is like, no, fuck no. I'm going to throw a wrench in Klaus's whole plan. And so he goes behind Klaus's back and, like, rescues the other people he needs for, like, the sacrifice or whatever. And basically just takes away Elena's freedom to, like, show Elijah that she's being truthful, as well as Elena has to die in this sacrifice. For those of you who've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. Elena has to die in order for this curse to be broken on Klaus. And it won't work if she's a vampire. And so the last thing Elena wants is to become a vampire. But what Damon does, how you become a vampire in Vampire Diaries, is you drink the blood of a vampire and then you die with it in your system. So she's gonna die that night. They've all basically said, okay. So Damon's, like, not having it, and he feeds Elena his blood. Which is, like, the sickest taking away of choice that there is. And, like, but in his own up way, he means well. He doesn't want her to die because they supposedly have a method of bringing her back to life, but they truly don't know that it's going to work. And so he doesn't want her to die. So, like, all the decisions he makes on her behalf are meant to keep her safe, and it is what he thinks is best. And it's a little toxic, but he really does mean well, and he's a really good anti-hero because at the end of the day, his moral compass is there. It's just very skewed, and it's always meant to be in the right place. Yeah.
That's how I feel about my anti-hero.
Jason Todd, I've already talked about. Wait, no.
The Fictional Crushes episode is gone. So I can't. I have to do this for a third time. Okay. So for those of you who don't know about Jason Todd is the second Robin. Basically what happens is Nightwing doesn't want to live in Batman's shadow anymore, so he decides to leave because he doesn't want to take up the mantle and turn into who Batman has become. So Batman, after Robin leaves, sees this kid who tries to, like, take his tires for money and decides to sort of have him become Robin in Dick Grayson's place. And Jason Todd has a lot of potential, but his problem is he's very troubled by what's happened on the streets. Because Jason Todd, his mom was a drug addict, his father was in prison because his father was doing some shady shit. And Jason Todd basically had to sort of fend for his family and become the man of the house. So he understands how Gotham functions. He understands that the justice system isn't necessarily going to give people the justice that they deserve. And so he sort of grows up as Robin, as this very angry figure who has a completely different moral compass than Batman does. Because his thought is, if I kill the criminal, then no one else will have to suffer the consequences of losing someone that they love. Whereas Batman has that no-kill rule because he's actually lost his parents to criminals and believes, like, if you kill, you're no different than they're going to be. So he creates this interesting contrast with Batman where they have this dynamic of whose moral code is right, like what is justice as a universal concept. And I think that foil behavior there just makes it interesting because Batman sort of has to explain where he's coming from and has to try to fend off other claims of what people say about, like, well, if you kill this guy, right, like, it's going to end the cycle. So I think that that's interesting too about them. And the fact that Jason Todd is so rebellious against Batman that he's willing to do things that Batman is against. Like Jason Todd wields guns and Batman tries to avoid firearms because that's the thing that took his parents away from him. Things like that is very interesting to me. But I feel like I've always loved him because I can relate to the anger that Jason Todd felt towards authority. Just the fact that, like, you don't know what's best for me and you are trying to tell me something that I don't necessarily understand or agree with is something that I've sort of felt a lot of my life. And I don't know, I've just sort of had this I just feel very sympathetic towards Jason Todd, I guess I should say, and kind of protective over him too, because I'm like, I don't know.
Like,
I've had a crush on his character for a while.
Mood? That's your forever crush. He'll never die.
He's kind of died off. We're going to get into that with the villains, but...
Okay.
I also wanted to mention, too, I like the fact that anti-heroes in general, I just wanted to say this, that they're amoral makes it a lot more interesting.
Yeah, like, that's why I like Damon a lot. He's a lot more interesting of a character than Stefan, as much as I do love Stefan's character, because he has fun through his immorality. Does that make sense? Like, he's enjoyable. Yeah. Like, it makes him sarcastic. It gives him personality where it's like, I know this is a up way to go about doing the right thing, that it's doing the right thing. Just, like, not in a way that most other people would do it. And that's what I really like about Damon. So I think they are definitely more fun.
Yeah, that's the same with Jason, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we can agree that anti-heroes are probably our favorite out of the 3 tropes we're exploring today.
Yeah. Yeah. Although villains are growing on me. We're going to get into that.
Villains are really growing on me. I think the only one I can really think of off the top of my head that I think is super complex is Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Because the way that they did it, I don't remember what disorder that he had.
Yeah.
They gave him a disorder on purpose, and that's something I don't like that I'm going to get into.
Yeah.
Where I don't think the original Joker story was he had a mental illness of some sort, right? Or a mental disorder.
His original story, based on the Killing Joke, I don't think the Killing Joke is classified as canon, but I can't remember.
Editing Madison here. It wasn't intended to be canon, but it was eventually adopted into the mainstream DC story arcs. But basically, to try to condense what I was saying in the podcast, the Joker was a failed comedian who was trying to provide for a pregnant wife. These men sort of end up approaching him one night and saying, hey, we know a way to make good money, but it's illegal. And he tries to back out, but what eventually happens is his wife dies, and he realizes, I have nothing left to lose, so why don't I go ahead and do this? And long story short, he ends up falling into the chemical pit. Most interpretations are linking that to the Batman and saying that it's the Batman's fault, but his story does not revolve around mental illness. It's more so about how a normal person can be driven insane by what happens with societal pressures.
So I think that the fact that they gave him a mental disorder was not something that I enjoyed about it, but I do like kind of the descent into madness that's shown with it.
Yeah.
If you removed the, like, disorder aspect from that and just left it as, this is how he descended into madness. And, like, kind of took out all the bullying and stuff, too, because I feel like using that as an excuse to be evil, it's, like, it's kind of going against the whole school shooter thing where it's like, oh, well, they were bullied, so, like, it's obvious that they would do something. Not everybody who's bullied picks up a gun and shoots up school.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I think that the Joker being like, oh, he was bullied and that's what caused him to descend into madness, I don't like that. And I want to make that clear because I don't think that's the right way to go about that. But I think if they just kept it as his descent into madness, I think the adoption thing, when he found out that he was adopted.
Yeah.
I think that should have been what triggered it. I think it should have started with him, like, taking care of his mother and kind of being like, all right, well, work sucks, and now I have to go home and take care of my mom, and I'm just so worried about her. And then she gets checked into a mental hospital, and then he finds the adoption records, and that starts to drive him insane.
Yeah.
And, like, finding out about his past would have been a much better way to, like, portray that than having him be
bullied and having a mental
ill is not the right term, but, like, having a mental disorder.
Yeah. And I agree with you there because a lot of crime is actually caused by low socioeconomic status. It's a lot of the times what really happens
Extreme
when
stress.
extreme stress and just underneath circumstances where like the world isn't providing for you, and so you feel like in order to survive you need to do these things that are considered breaking the law or immoral.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like that would have been a bit more realistic to show his descent into madness.
Right, like it could have been like him finding out the information, then getting on the train and being really pissed off, and then those guys coming at him, and then he goes insane.
Yeah.
And like kills them, and then he's like, who am I? And then he just slowly descends. I think that would have been better, but I do like the way Joaquin Phoenix portrayed the descent into madness, because it started out very light and him just wanting, you know, companionship and everything, and then it just getting worse with his mother being, I believe she was verbally abusive in the film too, where she was like, you are terrible, you're a piece of shit. And then him
Was she physically abusive too?
She was.
Okay.
She was. And I think that having that, and then like the girl across the hall that he was hopeful for, and then seeing everything kind of crumble down around him when he finally had enough at work. I think it was right after he was let go that he brutally like stabbed those people on the train.
Yeah.
And I think that was interesting, and then how he slowly descended into, and then you see by the end of the movie when his two old co-workers come into the apartment and he stabs one to death and lets the other one go. Mm-hmm. And then you see him go on the show, like the talk show.
God.
And he goes, yeah, and then he was just like going off on like this rampage where you see like, oh, he's really... And he's in the full Joker face and makeup and hair, and he's really ready to just go. And I think you see with the chaos in the city, he's just dancing through it.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what he wanted, for everybody to feel like he feels. And I think it was very poetic in a way, because you see very deeply into the Joker's mindset.
Yep.
And what's kind of driven him mad. Mm-hmm. And, like, maybe basically the methods behind the madness.
Yeah.
And then I think that it was just so beautiful that I think he's one of my favorite villains for the way that he portrayed that madness. But I think being under the guise of a mental illness does not help his case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
And that's not the fault of him. I think that's the fault of writing.
Yeah.
And I, as a writer, as a screenwriter, can say that. That is purely the fault of writing. There's really nothing that can justify that's portraying someone with a mental illness in a way that, oh, of course they're going to go mad because they're mentally ill. And I also thought it was very demeaning that he carried around a card with him. Do you remember? He had, like, the index card being like, ignore me, I have, like, a laughing disorder. Or, like, a mental disorder. And I don't think that that's okay either. I don't know. That part didn't sit well with me, so this isn't really a portrayal of how he's my favorite villain. But I think also that the Heath Ledger Joker is a much better portrayal of a villain. Because we fell asleep during these movies. But
I've seen them all the way through, but
I remember like the image at the beginning when they're like, I think robbing a bank. And then he has them around the table. I can't remember what he's talking about, but he's like, okay, kill these two. Like sitting at the end of the table. And people drag them out.
Oh, yeah, he does like you want to see a magic trick, and then he has the pencil, and then he's like, puts his head.
Think the reason that the Joker is also my favorite villain is the lengths to which the people who play the Joker have gone to get into that headspace. Like Heath Ledger, that role is ultimately what killed him. That's what people say, is like that's ultimately what ended up killing him in the end. Is like that was it kind of like paved the path. And I could be wrong. I feel like I did read that somewhere though, but like I think it was like the Joker role paved the path to like his death.
I don't know how true that is because I don't have a lot of knowledge of acting, but I believe you.
But I think he basically locked himself. And for whoever has the exact correct information that I forgot to look up yet again.
You can always do like a re-recording too and insert that into here.
But I'm going to double check this, but I believe that I read that Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel room for a month or two. Or maybe 6 weeks, but like, I think a month or two max. Just learning and studying the Joker. And studying what would make him tick. And trying to really get himself in the headspace of being deprived of sanity and human interaction. And he did it beautifully. And I think Joaquin Phoenix lost like a crap ton of weight.
Oh God, yeah, that
to become the
scene
Joker.
Where he's dancing in his underwear just makes me.
Oh, it's skin and bones, and it terrifies the absolute crap out of me.
Yeah.
And I think the lengths to which people go to portray the Joker is also what makes him such a poetic villain, because he is so deranged. Mm-hmm. He has not one shred of remorse.
Interestingly, he also has something called like super sanity, where he's aware that he's a comic book character. And I think that adds like a whole nother layer of complexity to him, because he realizes, well, I'm a comic book character and my purpose is to be a villain. And so I'm going to live up to that role and be the best person ever.
I'm also interested in the dynamic that the Joker plays with the Batman. There's one comic book within the New 52 story arcs called The Death of the Family, where all the Bat family storylines basically converge, and the Joker captures each member that's related to Batman and basically tries to isolate them and turn them against Bruce. And there's a lot of interesting things that sort of happen within that comic book, where the Batman finds a card related to the Joker within the cave. And so he was like, the Joker came in, but he hasn't done anything. And it's Batman trying to figure out what the Joker's motivation is for kidnapping all of his family members. So what happens at the end is that the Joker ends up on some sort of ledge, and Batman is kind of talking to him as he's hanging off of there. And Batman is saying things like, do you want to know who I really am? Do you want to really know what my secret identity is? And the Joker goes insane and is like, no, I don't want to know who you are. And it gets to the point where the Joker lets go of the ledge to avoid knowing who Bruce Wayne is.
And I think that's a testament to how much like the Joker just depends on a hero in the case, and how much he wants to play that role as a foil to Batman's behavior, because he just has a weird, deranged relationship with Batman in general.
Do you think that maybe that's because Joker did kill Bruce Wayne's parents, right?
No,
that's right. No, he didn't.
That was one of the theories, but I don't think he did. It's different from comic book to comic book.
Okay, I mean, because my thing is like, what if the reason he doesn't want to know Batman's identity too is like, maybe knowing would cause him some shred of remorse, because then he'd be like tempted to like go in on his personal life when he's not acting as the Batman.
Yeah, and the Joker's mentality is, if I know who Bruce Wayne is, then the game isn't as fun anymore, because then I see him as a human being rather than this legend of Batman.
But that's my that was the only villain I had that I came up with. I don't even want to talk about Voldemort. He's a shitty villain. I have another Harry Potter villain for you all, but that's not in this episode. That's next week.
Oh, is it Bellatrix?
Oh no, she's my favorite villain. She's my favorite. Well, it's not even like from a villain perspective. I mean, like, I'm talking about villains that are like hateable and why I like that they're so hateable. But maybe I'll throw Bellatrix in there. But like, no, Bellatrix is just fun. She's like the sick version of like, you would be fun. Like, I look at Helena Bonham Carter and I can't think of her as anyone else.
She played Bellatrix very beautifully, I would say.
My queen. There's also, for those of you who have TikTok, if you ever want to learn more about like Bellatrix and like the Black family lineage of like Narcissa, Andromeda, and Bellatrix, there is a TikToker whose is at Kylo Squash, and she and her family actually are filming like their own TikTok series called The Noble House of Black, where she plays Narcissa Malfoy, her cousin plays Andromeda, and her sister plays Bellatrix. I might have that mixed up a little bit, but like, it's really interesting, and they're very, very good. Like, they've done full-on productions for this, and it's awesome. So if you ever want to learn more about Bellatrix, she's got her stuff down. I love her. Anyway, shameless plug. Continue.
One of my villains. I'll start off with something. That's all that you had?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. I'm wondering if I should skip Light Yagami and just get to my shameful crush, which I mentioned in the fictional crushes episode. This is what I'm nervous about.
We like shame.
But But I talked about this, but for those of you who haven't gotten the chance to see the episode, I talked about how this villain in particular, if you remember, I had to stop watching the anime because I had such an intense attraction to this character. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, I've just felt very guilty about it for like the past few days, because I'm like, this person is vile and nasty and terrible. Yeah, exactly. But so I'm not going to name him by name, but I'm going to give the title that he goes by sometimes. The magician from Hunter x Hunter is the person I'm talking about. And I know he's messed up, okay?
Obviously, if I had the choice of being attracted to his character, I wouldn't be, because I understand the fact that a lot of the things that he does are completely unacceptable, and there's no way that you can try to excuse his behavior in order to like him, like a few people in the fandom try to do. But I feel like if I don't talk about it for personal mental health issues that are a bit too complex for this podcast, I feel like I need to talk about it in the very least on this episode. The first time you meet his character is during the Hunter's exam. And if you don't know what the Hunter's exam is, it's basically the series of tests that people have to accomplish in order to secure a hunter's license. And it's very rigorous. A few people can actually die from taking it, but at the end of the day, it comes with a lot of benefits, like being able to travel from place to place without any restrictions, earning a lot of money from the profession, and also killing with immunity. So Gon, who's the main character, decides to take the hunter's exam because his father left him, and he sort of wants to understand why the profession was more important than raising his son. He meets the villain there, and Gon is automatically told, like, this guy is dangerous, you shouldn't be around him. He's killed a previous examiner, and that's why he's failed his exam, so stay away. And when I was hearing that, I automatically assumed, because he looks like the Joker, that he would be a similar character in that way. So I automatically wrote him off and thought, he's nothing important. I don't really have to worry about his character arc.
But further down the series, you get to this part where, so Kurapika and Leorio are other parts of the hero dynamic, and they sort of stumble upon him in the woods, and there are these other hunters that sort of are ganging up on the villain and trying to prevent him from getting his license. And so he starts using these very powerful abilities that Kurapika and Leorio don't really know about, and you get to learn what that is later, but they're seeing him killing all of these people, and Kurapika is basically like, oh, we have to like run, like this guy's like too dangerous to fight. But Leorio, being the idiot that he is like, why don't I come in and try to fight this guy, even though I just saw him kick ass, like, and like, oh, I'm gonna live. Yeah. Leorio's stupid. Leorio reminds me of the love child of like Waluigi and Wario, but like, oh my god. Literally, look up a picture of him. I'm not kidding. He looks like the child. He's greedy like Wario is. But he reminds me so much of Waluigi. That's what he looks like. He looks like Waluigi. Don't tell me he's not the love child of Waluigi and Wario. But anyway, he's stupid. He decides to try to fight the villain. And the villain obviously beats the shit out of him, and Gon has to kind of step in to try to prevent the situation from escalating. But my thought is, the villain's gonna end up killing both of them, and or someone else has to try to interfere to prevent that from happening, because he's portrayed as this bloodthirsty person. What ends up actually happening is the villain, after beating the out of both of them, picks up Leorio, throws him over his shoulder, and is like, I'm going to try to help you finish this phase of the exam. And I was like, what the f***? Like, what do you gain from this? And just being like, oh, I have to sort of open my notes again because I wrote you off as a psychopathic killer when you're actually more controlled.
I don't know if the word controlled is appropriate to use here, but my problem is, which I sort of forgot to explain in this segment, I tend to view people as puzzles, as I said earlier. I like to figure out what makes people tick and how people work. And so when I saw him starting to do these things out of pure amusement, I kind of was a bit curious to figure out what his motive was and why he was doing what he was doing.
But anyway, so that pattern sort of continues, and you get to the third phase of the hunter's exam where so you're kind of assigned at the beginning of the exam these badges with numbers on them, and that's kind of how you're referred to. So the goal of this phase is you earn 6 points, and how you get those 6 points is you either keep your own badge, which is worth 3 points. You can steal a badge from another person, which is worth 1 point, and then you're randomly assigned someone at the beginning of the round, and that's worth 3 points. And so Gon, by like that dumb stroke of luck, ends up with the villain's badge, and he obviously trains and is eventually able to steal it from the villain. What happens is, as Gon's running away, there's this hunter that has Gon's number that's assigned to him, and he basically intercepts Gon, hits him with like this dart that sort of paralyzes him, and then takes both the villain's badge and Gon's badge and runs away. And so you're kind of sitting there thinking like, oh, he's like done for, like Gon's not going to finish the exam. But what happens is the villain like kills the hunter that interfered with Gon, drops his corpse next to Gon, and mind you, Gon's like 10 years old. So yeah, you're like, why do you like this person? And gives him Gon's badge back and the villain's badge back.
I forgot to mention too, Gon, after the villain returns the badges to him, tries to get the villain to take like both Gon's badge and the villain's badge back, because he's in this vulnerable position and the villain has an obvious opportunity to do that. And the villain, add child abuse to the list, punches Gon across the face and says, if you can punch me as hard as I just punched you, then I will take my badge back. But in the meantime, you kind of have to just deal with it.
And so I was like, why? There's no benefit from that. Why are you doing that? And so it just kind of made me more and more curious to try to understand like why his character was motivated the way that he was. And you eventually sort of figure out like the villain has this like sick, twisted self-interest where he wants to like challenge the most powerful people ever and defeat them in some way. And so if he sees that there's any potential with those characters, what happens is that he will do anything to try to protect them and try to keep them developing along their path so that one day he can challenge them.
And I've never seen a villain act in that way. I've never seen a villain who works with the hero because it's fun for them, not because they're forced to do that, and who is so protective over the hero that they would just do anything to make sure that they get to be the ones that defeat them. And he's very unpredictable with the amorality that he has because he's so self-serving, and that changes from day to day. You'd never really know what it is that he's going to do and what his motive is going to be. And I think that's why he's so fascinating to me, because usually characters and people in general are predictable and I can figure out who they are and what they're going to do. But with him, it's like, I can't. And that's why I'm so fascinated by him, even though that's a messed up, weird way to put it. That's where that comes from, at least for me.
I'm a little alarmed by the dropping of the corpse next to a 10-year-old.
There's more up stuff that I'm too scared to insert into the podcast.
I'm too scared to hear it. I don't ever want to know.
But yeah, that's my up fictional crush. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm in love with Kai Parker, so.
I know, that's why I'm comfortable telling you this, but other people...
I'm in love with a man who, like, serial murdered his entire family, so.
All right, agents. We're going to end this episode a little bit short. We're going to be talking about female heroes, villains, and anti-heroes next week, so please tune in if you're interested. Leave a review, subscribe to all of the socials, and let us know who your favorite male heroes, anti-heroes, and villains are. And yeah, we love you, and get the out.